Today we have a meeting with the Planning Department and Prosecutor's Office, and I will now turn it over to Director Jacob Gabel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's the last time you get to see me this week, so we had a lot of time together yesterday, and I appreciate the time you guys spent deliberating on those files. So there was a lot of time and effort that went into both that text amendment and the comp plan change. So I'd let Swati know it was approved, and she congratulated you guys. So there you go. Just thought I'd pass it on. As far as the board update meeting goes today, we pushed this from last week to this week because I was out of town last week. But we'll give you the same rundown that I have with some minor changes. So here's the list of planning related meetings for March. Oh, and just for the record, this is published on our website, and I've been mentioning that at all of the planning related meetings, so with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission and the hearing examiner. So every time I get a chance to say to the public that we're publishing this on the website, so anybody can go through and review and look. I know members of the Planning Commission have been pretty grateful that it's on there because they can kind of see what work we're doing and all by the numbers. So, here's the planning related meetings for March as it sits right now. As far as the org chart goes, we've hired the 2 vacancies we had. So Marciano McKell and Alan Bajorquez. Did I say it right? Okay. Are our 2 new investigators. Both started within the last month, and they're getting trained up. Other than that, no other changes. So the building location permits, so we're kind of right on track. We're a little bit higher than we were last year at this time. So we're at 164 year to date versus about 125 last year at this time. Most of those were driven by some our compliance related activities, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Any questions on building location permits? And then Title 12 stats. So again, I've lumped these together for you. We have seen a decline in the quasi-judicial files, which is kind of typical this time of year. Usually we'll get a kind of a bigger amount in late in the year, early January. So right now I think we have a number of files scheduled through the beginning of April. And then after that, we don't have anything. We just received a couple of subdivision files recently, so we'll see those here in the next little bit as well. But that just came in, I think, last week. So these are numbers through the end of February. So you'll see those reflected next month. Now, we're kind of steady with our administrative land use files. A lot of those, I think, are vacation rentals permits that are coming in and getting renewed. I think we have 15 in the docket to work on. So, and those are the data behind it. Public records requests, we're seeing an increase in those. So 34. We have a couple of files that have come across that have a lot of public involvement. So we get a lot of public record requests requesting different versions or different copies of or different appeal documents for different files that we have. So and then typically we get a lot of realtors and land, speculative owners that are or purchasers of property trying to find out what's going on with their property. So that leads to lots of record requests. So we're working on it. As far as before I get into the financials, Intergov and Munis update. So we held a meeting today, and we're just actively working with our technology department, with GIS, on how to integrate into this cloud-based system. I think we're scheduled right now. The integration's the 28th and 29th. Is that right? So that's a Thursday, Friday. Thursday we won't be able to process applications because the whole system will be down. So we'll still stay open to the public and we'll accept them, and we won't be able to process any payments or any fees or invoices or land use files. So we'll be able to work out of Excel and Word and the other things, but as far as processing applications, we'll just have to put a pause on it for a day. So we have some other projects lined up for the staff to work on that day. Just kind of know if you hear complaints, that's what's going on. We've had this happen a couple times when Intergov has gone down, and usually people are fairly understanding. Any other updates on Intergov or Munis? No? Okay. I know, like right now, we've been having like a work group on Friday mornings and throughout the day Friday of working through the test environment of that and trying to work out all the kinks so that we're trying to anticipate any problems and fix them now before we go live. So expenses or revenue and expenses are about right on par where I would expect them to be in February. We saw a slight increase. I think it was mostly in the personnel budget because we hired another employee. So other than that, finances are about right on track from where I expect them to be. Any questions on that item? Okay. I don't have any pending Title 11 or Title 12 ordinances that I haven't sent you guys already. So there's some minor changes that I workshopped with the Planning Commission about a month ago, and I'm going to put the application in this week for. Other than that, I don't have any other changes to discuss. The comprehensive plan components. So as I mentioned yesterday at the hearing, we're down to just the land use component. I'm guessing that's going to take some amount of time. I think they've got the majority of the text, at least to the draft portion of it. The last thing they're going to work on is the land use designation matrix. So like what designations do we have? So the colors on the map, like what the colors are going to be without changing the map, just the verbiage of what those designations are. And then there'll be, so when more or less like our criteria for when we evaluate from a map change from one designation to the next. So they're modifying that text or at least doing the analysis of it. GIS has been awesome, building out some tools on looking at our current zoning and potential densities, and we have a really awesome application that I could show you guys if you like, that are all going into the land use component and helping the Planning Commission. So shout out to Mike and his team, they've been awesome to work with. That being said, that's where we're at with the land use is the last one. I'm going to combine all of the adopted components into one final PDF with links throughout the PDF to each other. So it'll be one document that someone can click on. They don't have to click on and find each individual component. It'll be a single document. So just kind of a heads up. That's something else we put together. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the Title 11 and Title 12 compliance and enforcement information that we have. So if you see here, that the graph on the Title 11 building violations, so the previous 3 years we had about 100, 92, 111, 105 a year. And the last year we had 212 total building violations. So we didn't go up in staff. We didn't hire anybody new. We didn't shift responsibilities to a different group. So it's the same number of people working on the same type of work. And this is that using the building footprint layer in GIS and working with GIS and bouncing off with them all of our previous permits to find out, what are potential violations. So the 2022 list, I think I've been talking about this for like the last year with you guys, where this information came from. So the 2022 list is what we're still working on. And then they built an application now for the change from 22 to 23. And this is that aerial imagery violation that was brought up, I think, Monday. This is the information, this is like the end result of all of that analysis on our end. So of the 212, 108 of those violations have turned into building location permits. So roughly $50,000 in fees have come to the county, but we also have 108 more buildings that are in compliance with our code. And this year, so just through February, we had 75 additional building violations, which typically we don't get that many in January, February. So this is our permit staff and our compliance guys working those aerial imagery violations to bring more people into compliance. So Mike's here, and I could show you the application that he built for us and what our staff is working on in gathering that information and like what exactly we're doing. I think there were some concerns about drone imagery and whatnot, and it's a once a year flyover, like Mike mentioned the other day, that we're using.
Could I pause you for a second? I've been getting a lot of questions from different people throughout the county about why does planning seek compliance? And what's the genesis of that? Why? I mean, to me, it kind of makes sense, but I'm also thinking about this on the record. Is that in our code? Is it a mandate from the state? Is it just good practice? What's the foundation that leads us to the use of the pictometry tool. And then as we also think about as we're having these discussions with homeowners around the county, how do we figure out and why? Could you give us some background on that, please?
Sure. So to me, the enforcement is enforcing the rules we have. So if we're not willing to enforce them, then why should we have the rule? So that's the first gut reaction on my side. Second would be both in Title 11 and Title 12, there's, I think it's 101.1 in Title 11. So the Board of County Commissioners shall designate a planning director who shall be charged with facilitating the enforcement of the provisions of this title. And it reads almost exactly the same in Title 12, where, so to me, it's code-based, my job and my team's job to enforce the provisions of the title, both 11 and 12. So, and I think the most efficient way we can do that is, so I'm always looking for the most efficient way in which we can enforce the provisions of Title 11 and Title 12. So that all of our information, of course, gets shared right with the assessor's office, which then, you know, people are assessed more accurately for the property improvements that they have. But that's kind of all of the benefit of enforcing Title 11 and Title 12. So does that answer your question?
I think it does. Thank you.
So if there are specific rules in which are found in Title 11 and Title 12 that the board disagrees with, as the legislators, I would say I would have the discussion and then remove that rule, right? So if we're not willing to enforce it, then we shouldn't have it. That's really what it comes down to. So this is the application that we're going to be using this year. This is what Mike and his team worked out for us. Do you want to do the demo on it and show them, or do you want me to run through it?
You can run through. I can explain it a little bit if you want.
So there's a flyover once a year, and then there's humans that go through and actually outline each structure. And from there, we give them a list of our building location permits, and then they find the delta, the difference, and then that list of what hasn't gotten permitted and is over 400 square feet, so what would require a permit, either a change or a new structure, is added to this list. So we kind of go down the list, we click on a structure here, it's identified, and then we review a whole bunch of different information, both like pro-val information. We look to see if it's a temporary structure like a tent, or if there were a tree canopy that was cut down and it was previously assessed, and it was, you know, it's been there for some time, so we look for that. We look for historical parcel numbers. So it could be that this was permitted for some time.
So is that an example of where the green represents the prior? And
so the green is a new building that wasn't there in 22 that is there in 23.
Yeah, so if you turn off like the building footprint layer, Jake, and then toggle the base map to the previous year, you'll see more than like nothing was there the previous year.
It looks like it was being constructed, and now it looks like it has been constructed. So we would do a whole bunch of other analysis to ensure that that building wasn't really there before and hasn't been permitted before we send any kind of letter out to them saying.
And it also benefits the assessor because they can verify measurements off of that, correct?
Correct.
And that saves them from having to go out and physically measure. And it's very accurate.
Yes, yeah.
I spoke with Dennis this morning, and he said less than 50% of county residents, excuse me, of which I'm one of them, has not given permission to enter their property. I told them I'd give them permission this year, but they said they checked my house out 2 years ago. Worked out perfect.
So here's an example where you have a property, 2 new structures are being built. Well, last year they weren't there, and there's no permit for those. And those are, of course, bigger than 400 square feet. So
Not only that, but it looks like
they're over
could
property
be,
lines.
setbacks, so that's.
Minor details on property lines.
Yeah. So that's the other thing we're enforcing then is setback requirements. So this could turn into some other like lot line adjustment if the guy owns. But this looks like that's a platted right of way through the center of that. So yeah. Right. So I'm picking these at random to kind of demonstrate
So is that
the
an
information
issue?
we're looking for. So.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
You road guys are so picky.
We like our right of ways.
Yep.
So
Kind of like the barn that was in the corner of the road, looking out there.
what happens in a situation like that then?
Oh, well, road vacation, right, Matt? I-
That's probably what they'll want to do.
That's probably what they'll end up wanting to do in that case, so.
They'll
Either way,
vacate that.
I wanted to show you like a high level, so if you get people asking, what exactly is planning doing? This is what we're doing, this is the information we're working with, this is how it's gathered, this is the team that's been working on it. We're not hiring more people, we're not going to outside consultants to give us more information, there's no additional cost to the county, this is a cost that was added to the Eagle View contract. We're just utilizing the information we already have to more effectively enforce Title 11 and Title 12. So it's something that hasn't been done before last year, so it was kind of new, and that's why I brought it up several times. But this new tool or new application that GIS has built for us is going to help us be even more efficient with that. Before we were working off an Excel spreadsheet and we're looking up all the information ourselves. GIS provided the Excel spreadsheet for us, and now they've built this into an application that is going to make it that much more efficient. So previous versions or previous ways to find buildings without building permits involved my compliance guys just driving around their area and trying to find a structure as it's being constructed and then going and talking to the landowner or sending them a letter.
Gas, wear and tear on the vehicle, man hours.
So to me, this is a far more efficient use of
Put the
county
overlay on
employee
the
time.
computer.
And
Let's see, that's a
I think
toughie.
it's a more efficient way to get higher compliance to Title 11. So,
It also helps with a lot with assessment and
Absolutely.
the appropriate.
Yeah, that was the original purpose of the building footprint data, was for the assessment or the assessors to utilize that data. And then, in talking with Jake, it's like, hey, we have this data. You guys have your building permit data. Let's combine them together and give you guys a more efficient way of doing your violations.
Now, the red ones, does that signify there's no permit, and the green one means
No.
there is and it's new, or?
the red one is a change, so it was an addition to a structure.
Okay.
Where the green one's just a brand new structure.
Okay.
So either way, we still use the 400 square foot. So 400 square foot was added to this structure essentially. So we'll verify all of that. We don't just take this list and send violation letters to everybody. We do a decent amount of analysis of each and individual one before we tell people they need to come talk to us. So.
Is that an example of an encroachment?
Possibly. Oftentimes these lot lines are off, especially lakefront lots and small skinny lots. So it take it with a grain of salt. It's the best information we have, but it doesn't mean it's 100% accurate. The building footprint is going to be, it's as accurate as the information we got from the contractors that draw the
Yeah, the location of the building footprint, it's pretty dang accurate. It's the parcel lines that are going to be off in some areas that are going to look like it's maybe across a line or whatnot, but it's really not.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions on this? I know I think there's some misconceptions, but I want to make sure as you guys gather or get questions from members of the public that you have the information you need to be able to respond. So, okay. And I'm more than happy to show that to any member of the public. So if you have someone that says, hey, I really want to see what planning's doing in that application, you can send them my way.
And you didn't do that with the drone?
Absolutely not. No, all the aerial imagery is gathered through manned aircraft.
Pictometry.
So pictometry. So oftentimes that will lead to some Title 12 violations. As you saw, like there's some of those that are probably blowing setbacks that will need to do some kind of another land use action to rectify it. So that's where we're at currently with unresolved zoning violations. So you can see we have a small number left over from last year and then to this year. So that's all of the compliance and everything on our agenda. Any other questions for me?
No.
I've heard from, and I want to just kind of get your maybe anecdotal response of, have you heard or do you guys see a problem with the fees being charged by planning currently? We're going through like a fee schedule review right now. Have you heard from members of the public that we charge too high of a fee?
I've never heard one way or the other.
No?
I've heard that the public doesn't like fees at all,
Yeah.
Fair.
but I don't know. But if we don't charge fees, then we're spreading it out across the taxpayer.
You're gonna have to put it on the taxes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
What type of analysis has been done of, let's say, Bonner County versus Kootenai County?
That's an apples and oranges
Excuse me.
comparison, because
Okay.
typically building fees are like a percentage of, when you have building codes, they do a percentage of the proposed or the projected tax assessed value. Given it's a building location permit, it's a lot different. I know Boundary County used to be $75 for their building location permits, and they're now $400. They recently changed that. I don't know what Idaho County charges. Those are the only other two counties that don't have building codes. So
is it fair to say that our fees are some of the lowest in the state then? If you were looking at an entire project?
I couldn't tell you, because the other fees you might get complaints about is the impact fees that we have to collect. Like Spirit Lake Fire District charges $1,725 for a residential dwelling, and we collect that through an intergovernmental agreement. We just pass it through.
We're a pass-through though.
So it's not our fee, we're just the collector of it. So just be aware that if someone comes in and says my building fee is $2,000, I bet you a large portion of that
Fire district or
is
something.
within a fire district. Northside Fire charges as well. So I've heard a couple public comments saying, and a couple kind of some stuff on social media saying they charge like outrageous fees, but that's kind of new over the last maybe month and a half or 2 months that I've heard that. So some of that might be as we're sending these violations out, we're then saying, hey, you need to come into compliance where they didn't want to before, and so now they're just going to complain about fees. So if you hear from it, please let me know. And we're doing a fee schedule review right now. We'll probably be bringing that forth to you guys here in the near future. So
When was the last time the fee schedule was updated?
2 years. 22, yeah, I think it was like May of 22. We did a minor change at the end of 22 and added like RV parks to the fee schedule for commercial, but we did a full review, I want to say in April, May of 22. So
Hey, Jake, can I chime in on this one a little bit?
go ahead, Bill.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, I think that just to paraphrase what the law says is that, any fee that we charge has to be reasonably related to the cost that we incur to perform that service, right? So that's why it's hard to compare apples to apples between different jurisdictions, because we could have completely different processes in place. For example, Cooney County, like Jake mentioned, because they have building codes, could have a much more thorough or in-depth review as opposed to a building location permit, and therefore they're just categorically different. So I guess as long as we're looking at reassessing the fees, the most defensible thing you can say is, we looked at the average time necessary to complete this particular task. We picked a value for how much, employee staff time it would cost to do that. And then the fee that we're proposing is roughly equivalent to that amount. So, I mean, as long as we're doing those things, then we should be just fine.
And that's what we did in like 4 months before we adopted the fee schedule in 2022 is I had planners track how much time it took for each file type, and I had text for each one of the building type or for building permit types, and then we associated that with the wages of the people doing the review, if there's a second review of that person, and then what the total cost is, and we did an average between different planners for each file type. So it was a pretty in-depth analysis back then.
One other thought, I think there's a portion of state code that says if we do increase a fee greater than 5%, then we need to do it. It needs to be taken to a public hearing before we approve that. So if you do see different fees that are going to be increasing substantially, just be prepared to do it at a public hearing. That's all.
And if you're adding a new fee, it has to be in a hearing as well.
Right. Yep, for sure.
You can remove a fee without a hearing, but if you're going to add something new. So we'll likely do some analysis on the high occupancy vacation rental permit because that has a higher standard of review. It's going to take longer. It'll probably have a second review by another planner or member of management. So it'll likely end up with a higher fee for a high occupancy. So just kind of a heads up that might be one that gets added.
Yeah, in the event we were to do away with the fee, I don't anticipate too much public outrage over that.
I think we want to do an analysis on Title 11 because I think some of those fees might be a little high for what it takes now to process them. So we're
Might
looking at,
adjust them.
especially like this small structure permit. We reduced it once already, and we're considering reducing it again. So just kind of a heads up, we're doing that analysis now.
Okay.
Perfect. That shows efficiency. We like efficiency.
Okay. I think that's all I have on my agenda. Unless you have any questions for me.
Are there any other questions for planning staff before I would entertain a motion to go into executive session?
Under,
Litigation.
okay. Make a motion to go into executive session under Idaho Code 74-2061F litigation.
I second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any deliberation amongst the board? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Loden,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmed, Commissioner Bradshaw.
Here, yes, ma'am. Fire away.
Close it, please. But I actually have some questions. You might be useful in this one.
I think we need to, Bill, do you want us to dial you in? I think we're still live.
What's that?
We're still live. Do you want us to dial
Well,
you in?
can you?
No, this is good.
We don't have anyone online,
Well,
but it will still be.
yeah, we're recording an executive session, which you don't want to do.
Oh, okay. You can call me. I don't care.
Okay.
Give me one moment.